Hello my beautiful badgers, Mexicoda back again with another Unity tutorial. What are we doing today? You guessed it, audio mixers, up and down, save and load. Unlike last time when we used the Canvas UI, now we're using the new UI. When I say new, relatively new, it's newer than the Canvas one. So, join me as we experiment and break things. Sit back, enjoy this lovely 8-bit music, and I'll see you all in a moment. Picked up some lovely free assets from the Unity Asset Store. This 8-bit music pack from UI Toolkit. You get 10 tracks, comes to about 22 minutes of music, and also this 8-bit sound effects pack from Audio Jack Games. And if you want the full pack, when it only costs you a $5 and you get loads. I think the sample one, it gets about 60 different sound effects. So just imagine how big the main one is. Inside Unity, I'm going to import in those packs, and I've also created my folder structure as well, so that's lovely. I'm using Unity 6.1, and I've got the Unity UI by default. It's version 2 that's inside my project, and I haven't tried any other ones in this example, but I think it all works pretty much the same way. We're going to go over to, I've created these folders. I'm going into the UI, and I'm going to create 2 files. We're going to go UI Toolkit, and the first one is a UI document. Even though it's called a UI document, it's actually the UXML template. So I'm going to call this one our audio mixer UXML, and also we're going to right click and create another file which is the style sheet. So the audio mixer style sheet, let's call it SS. Okay, and then we're going to go right click UI Toolkit, and we also want this panel settings asset. So panel settings. And imagine the panel settings is the same as the canvas. If I go to UI and I go to put a canvas in, see here it's got the render, it's got the canvas render mode, and it's got sort, and it's got a canvas scaler. Now if I look at the panel, you can see it's very similar indeed. So we're going to change this to be scale with screen size, and now it asks for a reference resolution, and it has the weighting for width and height. If I look at the canvas and I change this to scale with screen size, it's exactly the same values that it's got, reference resolution and a width and height. So just have that in mind. Think of this as you would the canvas, and then it's quite easy to move over from the old way to the new way. Now, if I go over here and let's get rid of this canvas here, we don't need you. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to go UI Toolkit and create UI document. It will put an object in my scene with this component UI document. Now I can drag in my audio mixer over here, and there, see visual tree asset, and it's dragged in it. But if I double click and open it, it's empty. Now this is where we're going to cheat a little bit, because we're going to go and use AI to make one for us, and then I'll show you how it looks inside here. But if you've ever made a website before, or you've used anything like Dreamweaver or any kind of WYSIWYG website generator, it'll be pretty much the same thing. And this is how the blank one looks. So we've got the encoding like you would at the top of when you're coding your website. It's got the UMXML values here, so it's saying this is my schema. Okay, the UI elements, I've got the UI elements editor here for the editor. So this is for the engine, this is for the editor. Here I've got the no namespace schema location, and that's it at the end of my tag for my XML. We're going to go and get ChatGPT, or you can use Copilot or Claude or whoever you want to help you make one. I'm going to do a very quick one inside ChatGPT, and let's see what nonsense it gives us. So here's my really bad prompt. Hello, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Please create a new UI document for the Unity 6 UI Toolkit. And here we go. It's important to let it know that UXML files, the root tag has to be UXML, and don't use UI document as the tag, because that's just wrong. And I've seen it do that in the past, so I'll just mention it now so it doesn't do anything silly. We want to have 4 sets of controls in a horizontal group. a vertical slider int with a range of 0 to 100. Now the reason, because you can have a slider that's got floats, and I want a slider int. They're different. Slider and slider int are two different objects. And I want a label above each one which says the name of the slider, and a label below each of them with where the value of it's going to get stored. And I want two buttons, a save and a cancel. There we go. And I want it to be in the middle of the screen. So let's see what it says. Here's a complete. I was really polite. I said, I hope you're having a lovely day. And it hasn't even asked how I'm doing or wishing me a lovely day. How really rude. Oh my word. So last time I'm polite to ChatGPT. Okay, so it's given us our XML and it's okay. The structure looks good. We've got here the style hasn't separated the style and the UXML. So do you know what? I don't like that. Style can be moved to a file if you prefer separate logic. I would actually like to have them separate. Let's move the style sheet out to its own USS file. And no, I was going to moan at it for not wishing me a lovely day, but let's not aggravate it. Okay, so here we go. There it is, and I've moved it out. It's moved it out. Okay, so let's grab this and stick it inside our file. Here we go, and so let's see what it's done. It's created the slider ints as we wanted, the labels and the labels, and the naming convention that it's got is master dash slider and slider dash value. I don't like that naming convention, to be honest. It's got it as the class, yes, but I don't like it as the names. So I'm not a massive fan on those. That's a bit of a shame. I would prefer that if it had them like this. Like that. You see? I would have preferred that kind of format. So you could, when you're doing your prompt, give it the instruction of how you want the name, or like camel casing the names for the classes, right? Or the objects rather. Let's put in our styles. There we go. There's the style. You can see it's just like as if you were making a website. So here you've got the audio panel class and the align self, justify component, padding width. Okay, it's a CSS like you would do anything. They're just calling it USS. And then over here we can see the structure, the XML structure that we've got for our components. I've renamed them master slider, master value, this kind of format. And we can see that we've got the visual element as the parent. So that's the group that they're in. And inside we've got a label that's we have a class of slider label. And then we've got the slider. And then we have another label underneath it with the class of slide value. Very similar that you would see if you're doing any kind of web structure. And then over here we've got another row for our buttons that I've renamed save button and cancel button. Now bear in mind it did have over here like this file name audio controls USS, but mine is audio mixer SS. So I'm just going to delete this, or we could rename it to what my one was called. So audio mixer SS. Okay, and then it will find it, or we could have found it manually, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, we're back in here, double click, and see it's got here the, first thing, I'm just going to drag this out here, you can see it. I'm going to remove this, okay, and now you can see without the styling, it's all looking weird, okay, and then if we add, here we go, it's added them in. I'm going to say, look at this. It hasn't really given us much to play with when it comes to for the heights here. And I'm old school. I would go in here and I would start adding like a class, okay, and I would go vertical slider class, and I would add the class onto these, okay, and then I would go into my CSS file or USS file over here, and I would go, let's put it up here, so I'd go full stop because it's a class, okay, and vertical slider, and then I would put in what my values for my vertical slider would be. So my vertical slider, I want it to have a height of, let's say, 150 pixels, and I want the width to be, I could spell the word width, yeah, to be 20 pixels like it's got here. Okay. Now it's upset because I've made changes, so I'm going to use my external changes. And then all of a sudden this, see, I only gave it the class to one of them. Now it's fine. How would I do it from in here? Well, I would go and find the element. So let's expand this up. And as you can see, this is the structure that we've got of our elements. So I would go and find this one here, and I would add my class. So let's go and add style class to it. So we want the vertical slider. Go vertical slider. Okay, I'll do it that. You do it that way. I'll probably like I'll be selecting it from a list. That way, you know you're not going to make any mistakes. But no, you can just do it that way. I see. It would be quicker to just do it in the code, wouldn't it? Like, it'd be just go in the code and in 3 seconds copy and paste that 3 times. But okay, let's do it this way as well. Let's do it the way that it wants us to. And now I've got my class on all of those. Lovely jubbly. And if I do Control S to save it, or File, Save here, same thing. What if we create an element like this? We'll call this one root. Right, and drag it in here. And now we've got our root. Let's make its, where's the size? Width, percentage, 100%, and height, percentage, 100%. There we go. And now we will make this thing. Here we go. That's better. That's more like it. Boom. That's what we wanted. So we've made the root full size of our screen, and then we'll put everything in the middle of it. That AI, that's what we wanted. Okay, so the prompt is only as good as the person who's talking to the prompt, to be fair. So now we've got the names of all these things, so we can actually use that in the code. So we've got master slider is its name, master value is its name, the buttons have got names, save button and cancel button. So then when we write in our code, we will look for buttons and things with those names, and therefore we will find them. Kind of like when you're doing your editor script, you're saying, hey, serialize object, find the property with the name potato or badger. Before we start writing code, let's make our audio mixer. So we're going to go make audio mixer. I'm going to call this audio mixer. And inside our audio mixer, we've got our master already for us. I'm selecting master first, and then going to go and say we want to have music. Go back to selecting the master, otherwise you'll make the next one a child of music. And then we want to have sound effects. And go back, click master, and now we want to have voice. So each of these, including the master, we need to click on them once, so they're up here, right click and expose the volume to script. You can also expose the pitch if you wanted to, but I've never had the need to change the pitch in a game. So go to each of these. Now you would think that by default, the name of the exposed parameter would be the name of the group plus what you're exposing. So the name plus volume or plus pitch. Actually, it's not. It's always my exposed parameter, so it's rubbish. You need to click on each one, rename them. So this one is going to be master volume. And I choose volume because just in case you are going to have pitch or whatever. So you can do whatever you want. Music volume, you can just call it music. Make your life easier. Rename, this one is SFX volume, and rename this parameter as voice volume. Now we have our exposed groups, so the 4 groups, master, music, sound effects and voice, and their parameters as master volume, music volume, SFX volume and voice volume. Now we can start making our scripts and create a scriptable object to store all this in. and also a singleton that we will control. I know I said singleton, but you know, in this case it works and it's fine. So let's create our scriptable object, and I'm going to right click, create file, mono behavior script, and I'm going to call it audio mixer container because we're going to contain the values for our audio mixer. Let's open that up in the editor, start doing some magic. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste some of the data structure that I want to create first of all. But before we do any of that, always remember, namespace up your life. I'm going to call this one messy audio, and I'm going to stick it in there. Well, always use a namespace. Make your life and everyone else's life so much easier. Also, to avoid any problems later, always make sure you're calling the libraries that you want, because some of them have got the same names. And this is also another reason why I don't like naming things the same as other stuff, like audio settings, because there already is one. So there's multiple lists. Okay, so that gets a bit confusing. So we also want to use using Unity Engine .audio and using Unity Engine. I'm going to try and not use link as much as possible so that you don't have any problems with doing things in like for Nintendo and other stuff. Oh, we got Unity Engine's already there. It's like, you're already there. Okay, what about system? Using system. There we go. System. Lovely. We've got them in. Okay, so I'm going to make here a region, first of all. I love using regions. And we're going to call this data structures. Okay, and then down here, we're going to end our region. And inside here, I'm going to copy and paste how we're going to structure our classes and structs for this project. Now, first one is going to be familiar because we just played about with the UI. So we've got the volume UI names is what I'm calling it. We could call it anything we want. So we could call it volume UI. To make it even easier. So we've got the volume UI, and each of those elements, those items, are going to have a parameter name. So that is the exposed parameter, master volume, music volume, and so on and so forth. The slider name, okay, so that would be master slider, music slider, and the name for the actual value label that we're going to have. So that was the one that was, you guessed it, master label or master value, and so on and so forth. So these little beautiful badges here. So that's our slider's name. That is our value's name. Yeah. We don't really care about the one at the top. It hasn't got a name, and you already just filled it in. So don't worry about that. And then we also want to be able to store the slider once we've found it, and store that label once we've found it. And also, we want to be able to store reference to the callback event so that we can register and deregister to that event as well to avoid any issues. Not sure we have to put a null in there. It's not coming up with an error or anything. So that's that one. Then we move down into the volume settings. So each time we're going to be using the volumes, we want to be able to store that information and reference it. So we've got the name of the volume, music, master, so on and so forth. That parameter again, exposed, we're going to save that. Now we've got two values for volume. We've got the value for volume that we're playing about live, and then we've got that original volume that gets saved and stored from. So when you're changing the volume, you can cancel and it will reference back to the original volume and go, you know what, I'm going back to what it was. We need to save that. Also, even though I'm not using it, there is a ball for is muted. So if you do mute, we could save the state that it is muted. To be fair, I would just put the volume down at 0 and then go that's muted. But you might want to have a checkbox that people can tick to mute. And if they untick it, it will go back to what the volume was. So you could do that. Rather than just go down to 0 and then have no recollection of what the music was like before you muted it. And in this volume settings, we've put here, so you can create a volume setting by passing through all those parameters, by passing through no parameters and just getting some defaults, or by passing through another volume setting and then inheriting those parameters. Then we've got into the volume data. When we're saving and loading our data, we really care about only the parameter name and what the volume was and the muted state, if you care about that one. And then we're going to wrap, we're going to have a load of volume datas, and we're going to put those in a list, and that's what we will save in our player prefs. So this is what we'll be using for our player prefs. And now we've got for our scriptable object, we've got the string for the name of the mix parameters. We've got the audio mixer group, which group does it belong to, and what is the exposed string going to be for that parameter. And then we can reference that later on. So there we go. Now we don't need it to be a mono behavior, because it's not a mono behavior. It's a scriptable object. So we're going to change where it says here mono behavior to scriptable object. And then we can get rid of the start and update because we don't need you for the moment. What we do need is a create asset menu. And let's see what it comes up with. Oh, look, it's given it a name, audio mixer containers. And it's given me a path, messy audio. And that's fine. And it told me it'll be number 1 in the order of that. Kushti. Now we want to start putting in some values. So we want to be able to store that audio mixer, and then remember this little badge over here, we want to have a serialized field, private, and I'm going to have an array of these, and I like to have this structure here. I'm going to call it audio parameters so I don't mix it up with the name there. And here, let's see if it knows what I want to do. It's doing it that way. I'd like to do the lambda because I can get away with it now. Here we go. Lovely. And before that, I want to show the serialized field for the actual private, oh, my finger's not working, private audio mixer. And we're going to call that audio mixer. I know it's the same thing, and I'm like, I don't like giving it the same name, because when we do, it will come up and it will be looking like this, and they're like, oh, which one did I mean, that one or that one? And back inside Unity, if I go to my resource folder, I right click, go to messy audio mixer container, and now it's made one. Brilliant. And if I open up here my parameters, now I was playing around in the past using reflection to be able to automate all this stuff, but it's such a pain. I would say spend the 5 minutes and just do this manually for now. And the reason why we're putting through the name is so that when I type in master, it will update this. Now you could make a custom inspector where the name is hidden and it will automatically get the name from the mixer group. That's an interesting way of doing it. Master, what was that exposed? We called it master volume. So let's drag these in. Now you could also, if you had a custom inspector, my mouse is not working. If you had a custom inspector, you could go, you know what, if I'm always going to have volume as the suffix. Do you know what, if you do that, just lock it in here. It saves you so many headaches. If you're always going to have the suffix as volume, you could also use that in your custom editor. So I'm going to put voice and voice volume, and here SFX, and makes more sense if I copied and pasted the volume bit, to be honest, isn't it? Music, and then just type in music again and paste it in volume. And like I said, I could even spell music, to type music 3 times to be able to spell it correctly. Music. Yes, the music. Everyone loves a little bit. Right, now we've got our values saved, and we're going to be using that when we've got our controller. So we're going to type here audio settings, and this is going to be our singleton is going to live here. So if I go to scripts and we create folder, here we go, mono behavior, we're going to call this the audio mixer settings, because if we called it audio settings, there already is one and I don't like that. So we're going to go to here, unlock you, and drag in this. Now this is going to become now a singleton. Now you could go to ChatGPT and ask it to make a singleton for you, or Copilot or whatever. Or you could use Google, or you could just copy and paste what I'm going to give you now. Don't forget, we want our namespaces to be set up, and boom. Okay, so here is our singleton. So the way the singletons work is that you have a static variable with the same type as what the class is. So in this case, it's an audio mixer settings class. So that's the type of static variable we're making. And generally, instance is the average name that we'll give these things because we're trying to track what the instance is. So we've got audio mixer settings instance, and now I've got a method here that will try to set that instance, and it's checking to see, has it already been set? Or and if it has been set, am I it? Am I this instance? So if you're not the instance and it has already been set, then I should be destroyed. And we've got to check, am I a build or am I in the editor? If I'm in the editor, am I actually in the editor or am I playtime? So then I will either use destroy immediate or destroy. And I've put in here this don't destroy and load because if I am changing scenes, I want to have this audio mixer settings always there, so I don't need to worry about instantiating it again. Okay, and I'm just paranoid. I've put it on enable and on awake. Doesn't really make a difference because this here will stop. Say, hey, look, I already am the instance, so it doesn't matter how many times I call it. But I just put it there. I'm paranoid. You don't have to be paranoid, but I'm paranoid. If you remember my old tutorial, I went and was showing about how this logarithmic curve works and all that shenanigans. And we had here the code that we used for getting the decibels and converting it to a number and vice versa. So we're going to do a similar thing. We've got two methods here. One to turn our 0 to 1 value into decibels. And we've got one to take the decibels and put it into a 0 to 1 value. So now we've got this, we want to actually then look through our list of audio mixer groups and find the current value of the audio, because maybe for some reason you've decided that your default value is going to be down here somewhere. Okay, so if it is down here, then you want to be able to use that as the default because you've put a lot of effort into having the correct balance for your sound. And a lot of games don't just start everything at 100, you know what I mean, or everything at top. So in our audio mixing settings, I've added in a reference to grab our container, okay, and I've got here the list that we're going to create of the volume settings, which is why it was so important that we're actually using system collections generic and not something else. We want to have a method to be able to get that volume from the mixer, and it's going to return a float from whatever the volume parameter is that we're passing. So I'm going here, I'm putting a default volume to be 0. So worst case, it's going to be quiet. And then we're going to use the get float from the standard Unity audio mixer, and we're going to get out of there this dB. Okay, so this decibels float. I put in if it's true because get float and set float return as a bool. So if it was successful, it returns and says, yay, true, I was successful. If it wasn't successful, go, ooh, boo, false. That's why we've got this to check. If it isn't successful, I put a bit of debugging here to say, look, we failed to get, maybe it's not the right name. It could have been the wrong parameter. So it's always handy to put something like this in. So now we want to convert this decibel float into the 0 to 1 value, and that's why we're using our new method that we just did a second ago, the dB to volume. That won't do anything unless we actually start using it. So we want to build our list. So we're going to build, it could be a private, doesn't have to be a public, build the list. We've got to make this list. So the way this works is we check to make sure that we actually have our container, it's not null. And we're checking to make sure that we don't already have a list already made. Otherwise, we're going to get overriding it. It'd be a bit annoying. So if none of those are actually going to cause us to return, then we're going to make a new list just in case it's null, just to be safe. We're going to go through the length of all of those parameters we had in our scriptable object, and Then we're going to save the parameters from the audio parameters for each of these. And then we're going to make a new volume setting, and we're going to get the name from our param, the parameter exposed, so music volume or master volume. And then we're using this get volume from mixer to get the actual volume from the mixer. And that will save it as both the original volume and the volume that we're going to be using. And then we're going to add that new volume settings to our list. That is building the list, and that's getting the volume from the mixer. What about if somebody wants to get the volume from the list? So we should have some really easy methods that we can expose and, then say, hey, what is the volume for music? What is the volume for sound effects? Without having to do a long-winded method every single time. So let's use one that we can reuse. So we want it to be a public float, because we want to return what that value is. Oh, it wants to fill it in for me. It wants to fill it in for me, but I think it's getting ahead of itself because we want to get the volume from the list, not from the mixer. At least it knows that we want to have a volume parameter. I do appreciate the effort that it goes to try and pre-populate some of this. So the first thing we're looking for is we're going to put a default volume to be in there. And we're going to say down here, return volume. And that way it stops complaining that, oh, if it complained that I can't spell, it stops complaining that this isn't a valid method. So then we're going to double check to make sure that if string is null or empty, volume parameter, then let's just return out and run away screaming. And if we return volume, it's still going to be 0. Okay, so there's that. And then we're going to say, we could do a for each. So we could go for each and then loop through. But there's also another way of doing it, which it's shorter. It's not so clear when you read it, but it's basically the same as going for each if then I match. So if I went for each of these setting, and then for each of those, if this matches this, then get the volume and then break. Okay, so we could do that, which is very clear and easy to read. Or you could go and say volume settings setting equals volume settings. Oh, let's see if it does it. Yeah, look, it wanted to do it for me. Or it could do like this. So, because don't forget, it says var, it's this. Okay, so this is effectively the same as this. The difference between doing it this way and this way is that this is really clear and easy to read. This one, nice one-liner. If you're going to do it a lot, it's a lot less hassle than having to write for each every time and going through it. So there is that option. So you could do this and then say if the settings does not equal null, then we don't do that. So this. To be fair though, once you've started doing the if setting does not equal null, volume equals settings volume, then you haven't written that much more. And actually, I think I'll start counting words. It's the same as this. But I just wanted to show you the two. So if you're new to this kind of looks like you're using link, but it's not. It's link. It looks like link. This lambda coding here, right? This shorthand. But do it like that, and at least it's easier for you to read and remember why you did it. And obviously, if we're going to do a method for getting the volume, we want a method for setting the volume. And it knows, look, it's trying to fill it in. Let's see what it does. Now, would I use this? Is this what I wanted to do? So yeah, I did want to pass a volume parameter and the volume. And I did want to have some error handling on there to make sure that it's not empty. And I did want to do a for each. Again, we could have used the find, the lambda shenanigan. So we've got here, if the match, yes, if they do match, then we want to set the volume. So we want the volume to be this. That is true. But we also want to set the actual float in the audio mix, and it has to be the dB. And then it's saying set the float to using the volume to is exactly what we wanted to do. It worked it out for us. That is right. That makes me feel like I'm not needed. It's like I'm not needed anymore because it's done it. What about resetting the volume? Well, you know what to do because we need to have a method for void reset volume. And let's see what it came up with. Is it again bit of error handling, which we wanted to do. Now another for each. Again, you could have used the find if you wanted. So is it the same value? Then we want to do stuff. So aha. Now, not exactly what I was going to say. So I would have passed it in through this one, but you've already done a for each. So why would you double the for each? So it's basically saying, look, you could reuse me, set volume, but, and then just pass in the original. I'm already here doing a for each, so I might as well just go and do setting.volume equals the original volume and then do the same as we did before. And I'm not going to disagree with it because it means that you basically don't have to do one more for each loop. So that's great. Now, what if you want to set all of the volumes? You don't have to do each one individually. So let's see what it comes up with. Reset all volumes. Yes. Let's see. Reset all volumes. What does it do? So it's come up with a for each, and it's just then saying, hey, look, reset all of them to be the original volume and then set the float. I'm going to agree with it. What about public void set volumes? We go all, actually, set all volume. So let's see. I was a bit too quick. I was too quick for it. It couldn't predict what I wanted to do. So let's see. It's come up with, I also promised you saving loading, didn't I? So let's scroll down here. Let's make some space and add another region. So region, save and load volume settings. And here, end that region. So we want to have two methods here. We want to have a public void for saving it to the prefs and a public void for loading it on the prefs. But also, we want to have a constant private, constant string. Oh my gosh, it knows, look. Volumes settings key. That's a good, we could have that. I was going to use player prefs key. Well, that was what I was going to say. And here we can call it audio mixer volume settings. And that's what will show up in the registry edit when we look for our player prefs. It makes it easy for us to find it. Okay, so we need two methods now for going through and returning back and saving. And easy, so we've got the save it to the prefs. So remember before when we were setting up our data, so we're going to make a new list of these volume data types, and we're grabbing the data from our volume settings list. So we've got the size of it first, and then we're going to iterate through the count of what we've currently have as our volume settings, and then we're going to make a volume setting. Now we've got here var. You could just easily call that volume settings, and there we've got putting V for our value or our volume. So we're saving into here. So we're adding a new volume data, the parameter there, the volume, and there the value for is muted. And now we're going to make this into a string. We're going to JSONify it with a JSON utility. So we've got our wrapper, and that is that parent with all of the lists in. And now we're going to save it to using our up here, this key, and our JSON data that we've created, and we're using player pref saves. And basically the load is in reverse. So we're getting it Okay, from the key. Does player prefs have the key? Yes, it does. Great. Then let's get it, spit it out into something that we can understand. So that's the volume data wrapper. And then go through that wrapper and then start populating the values that we've got for our volume parameter here. Easy. Easy as pie. And where should we shove that? Shove that in the start. So we've got our enable awake start. There we go. So let's shove you in the start. We haven't actually started to use any of these. We'll put a build list in the awake. That looks like a good safe place to stick it. And we want to be able to actually, you know what? I'm not going to put it in the awake because we want it to be before it loads up. So why not make a custom inspector so that it will populate in the editor before we've started, so we can check it and make sure everything's fine. You could do it here and everything would just instantiate at runtime. Everything would get built and lovely jubbly. But what if we want it to actually see it in the editor before we've clicked play? Let's do that. Which is also a good reason why I made this editor folder. So we're going to go and create here the audio mixer settings editor. Got it? Just same name as your file, put editor at the end of it, and then after it's done its hold on, please hold on. Let's then turn this into the correct editor script. To do that, you need to use using Unity editor. Okay. Obviously, our namespace is still very important. And let's put that here. And we don't need this nonsense. What we do need, though, is for it to know that this is a custom. Oh, let's see. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I just clicked custom and it filled all this in for me. So now I've got it twice. All right, so we don't need that. Let's delete this one. And I also don't really need to do anything with the GUI. I could make a button, but I don't need to. What I do need to do is create here a private, look, it's trying to do it for me, audio mixer settings. And then on enable, I will, like this, audio mixer settings equals the audio mixer settings target. And now I will say, if it's not null, which it shouldn't be null at all, audio mixer settings dot build list. And because it's on enable, it will only work every time I look at it. So I got to look at it, look away, look at it, and then it will build the list. You're not believing me, are you? Okay, let's go and find it here. So currently our list is empty, nothing in here. Let's go to our resource, drag in our little friend over here. Hasn't worked, nothing's updated. If I look away, look back again, they've all updated. And now I can see. And remember that we had changed our master, and boom! There we go. The master, by default, we had it here in the audio. It was minus 15. So apparently minus 15 decibels is 0.162 blah, blah, blah. Right, let's put this one back up to 0. And just to prove a point, because you all think I'm mad, go 0, look away, look back, and just like magic, there we have them. So now we have our setup audio mixer, we have our scriptable object, we also have some methods for getting and setting the volumes, and we also have the save and load player prefs. What we don't have is anything that interacts with our beautiful UI that we made. Right, let's go and create another script. So we'll go here and say create mono behavior script. We're going to call this audio UI controller because this is the controller for our UI. Let it do its magic. And we want to say that we're using the new Unity UI elements. So Unity Engine and UI elements. Also, to avoid any problems, I want to make sure that it knows that we want to have lists using the system collections. Generic, and because, you know, I can't say enough, namespace, so messy.audio, and oh, my fingers. Let's stick that in here. Boom. Get rid of these. We're never really going to use the update. So remember that we were looking through before and we were saving stuff. We wanted to save it in the volume UI names. That's what this is going to be. So over here in the container at the top, in our data structures, we said this, volume UI. Okay, so we're going to use this to store all of the information that we have already made in our mixer settings. We need to build that list. So before we do that, let's put some variables. So serialized field, and we want to have reference to that UI document. And I'm going to call this the audio UI, and here we're going to say a public UI document, and it's going to be audio UI. And I don't want this one. I want it to be this. Here we go. I like that. I prefer that because I'm lazy now. So serialized field, and we want to have a list. So a list of our volume UIs, and we're going to call this our volume UI list. And then we're going to have, there you see, knew I wanted. And now we want to have two buttons. So we don't have to serialize these. Button, it's going to be the save button. And then we're going to have a private, which is not the load button, but the cancel button. Cancel button. And that's the same structure of the name that we called it as well. Oh, isn't that good? Now, do you remember we had the name of, it was like music, and then I said I liked it with an upper camel case, so slider or music, and then capital V value. So that's what I've named it. You might want to have a different structure, but if you know what you're naming it, then keep that in mind. Because now we want to have a private void build list, and we can then say if our, what do we call it, volume UI list is null or it's 0. And no, we're not going to return, you silly badger. That's a good thing. Or no, and here the audio mixer settings instance. Actually, you know what? Do you know what? Before we do this, let's check this. Okay. So what we're going to do is, if it is null, it means that we don't have it in our scene, or this is being called before it in the list, in the execution order of things. So let's give it another chance. Okay. So if it's null, meaning that it hasn't found it yet, so then let's say here, I'm going to put here audio settings instance equals null, right? So this is my instance here. It's complaining. So if this is null, then underscore instance equals, yes, find object of type. But why is it complaining? What have you replaced it with? It's now deprecated, and it should be used find first object by type. Okay, find first object by type. Here we go. Alrighty then. So now, and then if instance equals null, then we can return. Okay, we did 2 checks. Okay, I did my. It's basically saying, look, I did my best. I did my best. I looked really hard, but I couldn't find it. And you know what? We can put that in here. So, and we can do it like this. Even easier. Okay, so we're saying here, here's our instance. Find it, and because if it did found it, then suddenly this is like going, ta-da! I am the instance. Okay, so that's lovely. That works. Because then we can say, you know, we could also then go like else, boom, and then say here instance set. What was it called? What was it? Where are we? It was set instance. Is set instance? Okay. Public. Set instance. Okay. So shouldn't need to do that, but there we go. So now, even if it's below it in the order of execution, it should still go ba-bam. I'm double checking and I'm finding you and I'm waking you up. I'm slapping you in the face with a fish. And now you should be awake. And then here we are then now going to start building out our list. So volume, we're going to make a new list for our volume. And what does it think we're going to do? Let's see. What do you think we're going to do? A little helper here. So for each of our volume settings, yes, this is correct. In the instance for the volume list, that is correct. That is what I wanted. It should be like we should be having a check that it's not null, but I'll allow it. The volume UI, we want a new volume UI. Aha, see, now it's confused. So we want it to be full stop volume parameter. Okay, the first value that we want. Then we are going to be creating 2 of what we want it to be called, right? So the first one is the volume settings name, and then the word slider, and then the volume settings name, and then the word value. Then we want to add it to the list, and it knows it did. Okay, good. I will allow it. You are knowing what we want to do. So, lovely. Okay. So on the enable, we want to call build list. I don't know why it's done this. Go away. We want to build list. And now we have our list. Then we want to start subscribing to this. So we've built the list. So we want ignore this help it's trying to give. So now we want to have our root. Oh, look, it didn't know this. So we want the visual element root of our audio AI, and we will call that root. Not Groot, but root. For each of our UI names in our list, let's see what it comes up with. Let's see if it knows what we want to do. Kind of. Okay, so let's delete this. So what we want to do is grab the slider. So volume UI, this one here. Slider equals the slider name. Then we want to have the value label, and that's getting from the root, finding, it's querying the label and of this name, the label name. Now, if those are not null, so we're going to have here, so if the volume slider does not equal null. Now we could do this together, but you know, or we could do them separately. So, because it makes sense if they're together. Let's see what it came up with. Oh, well, no, we don't want any of this. So, let's delete the help that it's trying to give us. Actually, you know what? The help it's trying to isn't too bad. It's not too bad. It got a little bit ahead of itself. So we do want to have this slider change callback, okay? And we don't want this because I'm going to create in a new method over here. We're going to call this method here on slider change, and we're going to pass through the slider. So call it slider. Then label. So pass through label. Then we're going to have the string for the parameter, okay, and we're going to have a float that is the value. Okay, that's our slider change. And then in here we're going to call on slider change. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, it's the not the name but the value label, and it knew the parameter name we wanted to pass, and it knew we wanted to pass the value. We also want to register this callback, and we're going to save it in here. Okay, that's nice. So then we need on the slider change, we want to then say, hey, label, what's your text? Your text should be the value string. Why? So I don't want it to be, there you go, that's better. Okay, so, and then we've got the audio mixer. Let's see what it comes up with. Not too bad, not too bad. So it's passing through the value, but we need to divide that by 100. There we go. So we've got, because don't forget, our slider is 0 to 100, whereas the value that we're saving is 0 to 1. Right, so we've got our on enables, but that's not enough because we've got our buttons to worry about. So we want to have our save button. Let's see what it comes up with. Yes, that's exactly right. Our save button is, hey root, let's query for buttons called save button, and that's what we've called it. And the cancel button, let's query for buttons called cancel button. Again, brilliant. But not only that, we need to also listen to the events, subscribe to the events, register for those events. So we are now going to, oh look, oh my word. So click, because we haven't got yet the method for it, it will freak out. So I will save values, and then, oh look, it knew I said save and cancel. So let's make those before it gets too upset. So you can just do full stop if you're using, this is your IDE, and enter. So get rid of these so it doesn't throw exceptions. So now we have our save and our cancel. However, if you register, you must deregister, otherwise expect your memory to explode. So on disable, we also now need to go backwards. So we've got, oh, if I was going, why isn't it gone blue? Why isn't it gone blue? Now it's gone blue. So now we need to go backwards. So easy way to do it is to grab this and just turn the pluses into minuses. There we go. Now we are no longer listening to those buttons. Not only that, but we need to stop listening to these sliders. Otherwise, our heads will explode. So for each of our volumes in the volume list, we want to, and it knows exactly what we wanted to do. It heard me talking. This is really weird. Is it like listening to me talking? How did it know that I wanted to do this? Slider, unregistered value callback, and this one here. That's what. So we registered on the on enable. We unregistered on the disable. It's exactly what we wanted. It's really disturbing. Okay, and then we've got our save button and our cancel button. So when we cancel, we want to revert back to the previous settings. Okay, so we could just go and revert one by one or revert all of them. And if you recall in here, we did expose a method called reset all volumes. So we could just use this. So we go over to this one and go for each, not for each, you know, just, where is it? Audio mixer settings, instance, not the U, reset. And then it'll go boom, and that's it. It's just reset all of the values. But what it hasn't done, it hasn't gone through each of the UI and reset the UI. All it's done is tell the mixer settings, hey, I want you to reset the values. And then it will go, what did you want to do about the UI? And it'll be like, I'm not really bothered. I won't update the UI, which is not a good thing, is it? So we want to be able to update the UI. So another way of doing it, if we're going to do a for each anyway, we might as well do it. So let's use a for each because I do like a for each. I know it's a little bit less performant, but by how much? I'm not too sure. So let's get rid of this one. And let's say that we're going to go for each of these. It's already filled this in. So it said, look, your slider better not be null and your value better not be, label better not be. Like, yes, that is true. And instead of this one, which was reset all volumes, we're going to reset an individual volume. And that individual volume is going to be our volume UI dot parameter name. And then while we're doing that, we are going to not get the volume. We could actually do get volume from mixer because we've already reset the volume. It might be a race exception to see who was quicker. Okay, so we are assuming that by doing this, it's got the right value from here, or we're going straight to the mixer and getting the value. So, like, did you update the mixer in time? Umming and ahhing. So what I'm going to do instead, okay, we're going to say int instead of that. We're going to go volume equals math f, round it to the int. Instead of it being volume, because it's so like, oh, you've got me twice, right? Because I'm not going to do that one. We're going to grab this here, get volume from mixer, param name in here, take you out, put you in, and now instead of being from the mixer, we're going to be get volume. Oh, I can feel like, it like which one was updated first. We don't need to do this set value without notify int volume because it already is an int. Okay. Like, oh, let's save it and let's see, because we don't need to notify because it's listening. Okay, so we're setting this value without notifying so that it won't affect the. We're going to go in this endless loop of, oh, you've updated, because don't forget up here we've registered for any changes. So we've got that in here. Now, what happens when we save it? What happens if we save? What should it do? Well, pretty much the same thing, but the other way around. So now we could just say, make sure that it does have. We didn't do a check here, did we? Make sure that if this equals null, then return. There we go. Just in case there is anything naughty going on. And then we can say audio to settings, instance, and now we did that set all volumes command save. All right, now before we jump in, we've got our save, we've got our cancel, we've got our slider change events going on, and we need to be able to on load get the default values. Okay, so private void load values or load default, whatever we want to call it, and in here we're going to go and do a for each, and let's see what it comes up with, if it knows what we're doing. No, see, I don't know. So we want to go through our volume list. That's correct. If we don't need to, we could do this right from the start up here. So if we don't have an instance, get out of it. So what we do want to do, however, I actually did know what I wanted. Instance, get the volume, our parameter, multiply it by 100, so we get the 0 to 1 to be a percentage. Then we're going to set the value, without notifying, so we don't have a problem with the registered that the slider value has changed to this volume here. And we also want to change the label text to be that volume, the string. And we're going to put this load values in our start. So we've got the on enable, on disable. Did we have an awake? Awake? And yeah, we haven't had an awake already. And then we're going to have a start. So I'm going to put this here, boom, in the start. So now we're getting our default values. Ooh, this is going to be fun. So is this going to work? It could work, and it could go horrendously wrong. Let's find out. Let's go and drag in our controller. Drag in our UI document over here. This will only get populated at runtime. Let's click play. We've got no music playing at the moment. Oh, look! Look at this! And the little tweaky hack we did meant that we didn't have to worry about the execution order because it looked for it and then it found it. That's good. Let's go and see the audio controller. If we move this down, that goes down! That's working. This is great. Does the settings get updated? Let's have a look. Yes! Brilliant. Now if we move this down and click save, is that going to save it? Well, okay. That didn't save this value in here. So, are we calling the method? We are, but it's not doing anything. So what we should do, double check that we've actually got on our save and cancel here, say debug log, and then we'll say on the cancel debug log. Okay, that way at least we know that we save. And also we'll double check that we got the names right. So save button, cancel button, and in here it's called save button and cancel button. So at least the names are correct. We know that much. And then we pop over to our, where was the save? Here, set all volumes. Go, that's our problem. So we forgot to put that here. That's missing from here. So let's fix it. Setting, orig volume equals the volume. There we go. So that was like something was missing. some things I miss. There we go. Now it will save it. All right, popping back into Unity. Always put debugs everywhere. Debugs are your friend. Okay, gotta love the debug. Okay, so now we've got going down here. Click set. There we go, and it's set it and it's saved. So then if I go back up here and click cancel, it will revert back to the last save original volume. Beautiful. Does it do it for all of them? Let's try it. Click save and then move them around and then click cancel. Yes, it's remembered the state. However, is it going to save and load it into the player prefs? Not yet, because we haven't actually got it using the player prefs. So it hasn't actually saved it into the player prefs and loading it. Where we had set all volumes, we want to do save volumes to player prefs. Okay, and we want to load our volumes from player prefs. And actually, more than that, we've just loaded it in here. We didn't then call to set the volumes. If we change this to be public void save volumes, okay, and set the volumes, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune, and then this one in here. Lovely. And then we have, save that, and on the controller, instead of being set of volumes, it's save volumes. And then in here, after we've loaded, then we set the volumes. So setting the volume to what we have in the settings from them. So here, set the float from the setting volume. Do we say all volumes? Yes. Then it should work. And I think even like putting this back into here, there we go. Now let's look. Because you could ask a question like, why didn't it work? And the answer being, because you didn't actually tell it to update anything. That was why it didn't work. And now, it's not only updated the UI, but it's also updated the values here as well. Dun, dun, dun! Obviously, we need to test with some music and sound, don't we? Of course we do. So let's go and create sources. Oh, saucy. And inside our sources, let's put in an audio source, and we'll call this one music. And we'll add another audio source, and we'll call this one, where are you? Audio source, sound effects, and we'll put another audio source, and we'll call this one voice. And for each of these, you need to drag in one of the groups. So you don't need to drag in for the master, because the master is the master. Mouse, I need to, who wants to buy me a new mouse? There we go. And now we can just choose some music. Nice music from what we have. Track 1. Put it on loop. The sound effects. We can go and choose some really annoying sound effects, such as lasers. There we go. Put lasers on loop as well. And voice. Well, because I'm not going to put my voice in, let's just choose another track of music. Let's put this one here as my voice. Right. Make sure that we don't have this muted, because if you have that muted then you can't hear anything. That would be the reason why. And let's click play. Prepare your eardrums to explode. Alright, let's put... Okay, music. Put music down, nothing. Sound effects. Now this one, which is the X music. There we go. There you go. Now we've got it working. The new UI system. We've got a nice, flexible system for managing the audio mixers. You've got you can have as many of these as you want, and we've got our Scriptable Object here. You can just fill these out with as many as you want. You can make custom editors to make it even easier for you to have to populate these by hand. And now you can save and exit, and if you wanted, you could have on the save to hide this UI as well. Oh, have fun! What I would also say is there is a slight little annoyance with the numbers. So make sure, you want to be sure that you flatten everything to round it to the 2 digits. Always round to the last two decimal places, and then you won't have like 0.00099993121 and all that kind of thing. So if I click play in here, and we go to the audio settings here, and see how I've got here? Rounding to 2 decimal places. Always do that. So you don't have to worry about 0.4763217939194. Just do that. Round it to 2 decimal places, and you'll be fine. Right, if you do like these videos and want to see more, click on that big juicy red subscribe button down below. To all of your friends, random people in the street that Messi's getting messy with it. If you do like it, click it. Till next time. If you want to see more of my crazy videos, click on the left side of your screen now. And down below, there's that big juicy subscribe button. And right next to it is the magic bell that if you click it, it will tell you if I've got a new video coming out. Till next time.